Welcome to primary productivity. We're going to consider primary productivity to be the rate at which autotrophs create new biomass. And the question we're trying to answer is how fast are producers photosynthesizing, right? How much energy is being produced? And based on what we learned about energy pyramids, this is important in order for us to understand how well the energy pyramids, biomass pyramids, and so forth are being supported by the producers at the bottom of those pyramids. There's two major types of primary productivity. So first is gross primary productivity. This is the total amount of biomass that's being produced. The other type is net primary productivity. So this is the rate of production of biomass that's available to the next trophic level. Right, so remember we were talking about how organisms use energy to stay alive. The plants aren't just making food for themselves, but they also have to stay alive while they're making that food. So they do convert some sunlight to energy, but then they also use some of that energy to stay alive. And that energy they produce to stay alive is considered part of the gross primary productivity, but it's not part of the net primary productivity because that energy is not available to consumers. Right, so this is how the equation looks. The net primary productivity is equal to the gross primary productivity minus respiration energy, right? So plants need glucose to drive their own internal processes, and that is not available to the next trophic level. You definitely need to know this equation. So the units we're going to use, you could consider energy per unit area per unit time, right? Joules per meter squared per year. Also, for biomass, you might consider mass per area per year. And it's sometimes you forget when you're talking about years or time, you're talking about rates, right? How fast is this stuff being produced? So take a minute to look at this graph, right? We have the age of a forest on the bottom, which is essentially years. And on the top, we have how much carbon is going through that forest. So what does this mean? Maybe pause the graph or pause the video for a moment, write down some thoughts, and then start it back up when you're ready. All right, so you started the video back up. Consider that early in the forest's age, the gross primary productivity is not super high, but it gets higher, higher, and then it reaches some peak. And then as it gets much, much older, it's not producing quite as much as it did earlier on, and it's using more of that for respiration. When we're considering the forest, we're considering all the organisms in it, so not just the trees, but the other organisms as well. The more organisms there are, of course, they need more energy for respiration. So what can increase or decrease primary productivity? The amount of light, of course. If you have more light, you'll be more productive. The temperature, right? Productivity is a rate, right? And it depends on biological processes. Biological processes tend to go faster in warmer temperatures. Therefore, warmer temperatures, you'll have higher productivity. Obviously, that can be correlated with solar radiation, but not all the time, right? It can be cold in the desert at night. Trick is you don't want the temperatures to be too high, right? Because that can change the shapes of the enzymes that are doing the work. And some places have more nutrients, some ecosystems, right? Like ocean ecosystems. Their cold water has more nutrients than warm water. So you have to take a look at which ecosystem you're analyzing and how the temperature is affected directly. Another issue is carbon dioxide and water, right? Plants need carbon dioxide and they need water. So if these things are missing, that's going to hurt your primary productivity. Plants need nutrients. You might have been asking yourself, why do we do all this nutrient cycling stuff in our previous class? Well, that's because plants need nitrogen and phosphorus and other nutrients, right? Potassium. And so if they don't have enough nutrients, then they can't grow and primary productivity is reduced. One issue we have with phosphorus and nitrogen cycles is if there is too much nitrogen or too much phosphorus, that can cause algal blooms. This is a major problem in agricultural settings where farmers might put too much fertilizer on their fields, which then runs off to a stream, causes an algal bloom, which kills all the fish. Finally, herbivores that graze can lower productivity depending on what plant they're grazing on. And certainly overgrazing could kill a plant, and then of course it's not productive anymore. So we'll look at the most productive ecosystems as those having high temperatures, lots of water, lots of light, and lots of nutrients. Some examples of more productive ecosystems, right? Rainforests, swamps, and marshes have lots of all of these things, right? High temperatures, water, nutrients. Deserts and tundra don't have all of these things, right? They're very dry. Tundra is very cold. And when you take into account other aquatic ecosystems, like estuaries are very productive, but the ocean is not as productive. One of the problems with humans, of course, with this whole environmental thing is that we don't necessarily use the productivity that the Earth is creating, right? Every time we cut down a tree, what are we doing with that? Not really anything, and so it just goes to waste. The problem is this is way out of proportion with how much of the biomass we make up. We're a very small part of the biomass, and yet we're destroying all this part of the productivity. Just for fun, like what are some of the major producers out there that cause lots of productivity? Algae, right? Macroalgae and phytoplankton, which make a lot of the Earth's oxygen too. Seagrasses and bacteria can produce a fair amount of biomass. In the freshwater, of course, again, more algae. Aquatic plants are good producers in freshwater, and again, that bacteria. All right, so that's a quick overview and summary of primary productivity. Thanks for watching this video.